So this is your self-love reminder. I just had an interview with Azaria Carter. She plays Terica on P Valley, my show, and she also plays young Gabby on NBC's Found. And me and her had an amazing conversation. I can't wait to release the episode. But one thing that she reminded me of, just some of the positive things that she mentioned during that interview, was just making sure that you remember that you're already that person. So, whatever dream that you have, just keep pursuing it. And it's okay to be different. It's okay to be quiet. It's okay to stand out. Like, you're supposed to stand out. You're already that person. So, you're not supposed to fit into that crowd. So, I just wanted to just send another self love reminder, just based off that amazing conversation that we had, that it's okay to stand out. It's okay to be that girl. Like, you're already that person. Just don't give up no matter what you're trying to do, whatever you're trying to pursue. Make sure that you just don't give up. Don't let anything deter you, take you off course. Don't let anything make you think, oh, you know what? This is not working. I'm not fitting in. This is just not, I'm not working the crowd like I should. Don't let any of that crazy noise get to you. Keep working. Sometimes you're supposed to be the first one. You're supposed to be that first person to introduce that idea, to introduce that brand, to introduce that whole different platform. Sometimes everyone's waiting on you because you're supposed to be that new person that's bringing those things out. So don't forget who you are. Make sure, whatever you do, just never give up and embrace who you are. Embrace yourself. Embrace your differences. Embrace your uniqueness. Because as I said, sometimes the world is waiting for you to be the very first one. So don't forget that. Welcome to the Key Chat, the exclusive interview series brought to you by Go Queen Magazine, the self-love conversation with queens. Here, we shine a spotlight on the incredible journeys of inspiring women.
She's a queen about a business, working hard on a mission, head high, purpose-driven, crown on, never tilted. Go Queen. Go Queen. Go Queen.
So thank you guys for joining another episode of the Key Chat. Today I have a very special guest. Her name is Miss Leslie Black, and Leslie is currently on a new BET project called For What It's Worth. You guys may have seen it. It touches on so many great topics: family, mental health. So Leslie and I are going to chop it up about that experience, and we're also going to talk about some of the projects that she's worked on, and also my favorite topic, self-love. How are you doing today?
I am doing fabulous. Glad to be here.
Awesome. I'm so happy to talk with you. So, of course, I want to dive in and talk about For What It's Worth. I had a chance to view it, and it was so touching. It was really emotional,
Yeah.
of course. So I want to ask you, how was that experience working on that? I'm also a fan of Jill Hunt, like for decades, from like one of her first books, too. So I
It's,
thought it was really cool that she wrote that. So, how was your experience working on that project?
you know what? It was a really good experience. It was therapeutic. The vibes, the energy, just working with all the great producers, my cast, everyone who played my siblings. Like, it was a great experience. It got to touch on things like mental health, which is something I'm very passionate about as well in terms of educating people on mental health. So all the little nuances and topics that it had in it, it was compelling to say the least.
I know it was really deep, and I know like Fallon and all the different characters, like they all seem like they had their separate things that were going on outside of the whole family issues that was taking place, of course. Were there any challenges playing that character?
I think that the challenges were just having to go to those dark places to be able to tell her truth. There's a lot of truth in the character just within myself. I could relate to Fallon in a lot of different ways. So having to go back to those places where I can pull the truth out of was somewhat challenging, but I was able to do it, and I was happy about being able to do it. And I even sometimes stop and think about, when things happen in your past, you never really know why those things happen. But in those particular moments, I was grateful that some of the things I thought should not have happened to me in the past or should have never played out the way they played out. I'm thankful that they did, because now I'm in a position where I'm playing characters that need the truth to be seen, and I can authentically bring it because it's a part of it is a truthful, honest piece of myself. So
Right. Now, I know with the project, as we discussed, it did talk about mental health, anger management, things like that, dealing with your past, even your present. I wanted to ask you currently, obviously, this is Mental Health Awareness Month. In our community, the conversation has grown, I would say, a little bit more over the past few years, especially since COVID, regarding mental health in our community, within our culture. How important do you think it is for projects like this, just for us to be able to tune in and want something that discusses mental health? Because as much as the conversation is growing, it still has room to grow, like to have more conversations, more dialogue, more transparency. So how important is it for projects like this to be brought to media that discusses serious topics like mental health?
I think it's important. One of our producers, Miss Loretta, she is very passionate about all the subjects that are like being touched on with each sibling. And I feel like this project is important because I know it's got to be a lot of people in this world that just don't really have an outlet, don't really even understand maybe what they're dealing with. But the hope is that they can see themselves in these characters and see that these characters were able to overcome some of the adversities that they were challenged with. I my prayer is that this particular project can bless people to find those avenues to get healing, find those places that will allow them to overcome their mental health issues, because I really personally believe that it's something that society hasn't really grasped yet in terms of how to deal with it, right? So I have a sister who she passed away not too long ago. She suffered from mental illness. And so I got to see that not just society, but even like she was in like a lot of state facilities, they still don't really know how to manage mental health. They just put people away. They lock them out of society. They remove them from everybody else, and they think that that's the answer. But my sister wasn't crazy. She just had a disability. She can still function in society, but she just needed some assistance in doing so. And so I feel like it's still something that's being researched. I feel like it's not anything that we have grasped yet. And I think that it's also something that we as society have not learned to deal with, because they're not amongst us. What the state does is they just put them away.
Yeah.
So
You touched on so many points because, correct, mental illness is a disability, but it's not viewed that way. Then, of course, in our community, there's a lot of stigmas involved in mental health. And it's so easy for people to put that label, oh, well, so and so is crazy. That's just the easiest route that
easy.
people like to go to. No treatment, no help, no open conversations. It's really heartbreaking, honestly, how mental health is treated. And even now, as I mentioned, the conversation is growing, but of course, there's a ton of more room to go because even mental health itself, as much as people are talking about it more, I feel like even if someone says, hey, I have a mental illness, it's still like, whoa, like really, like it just, I don't think that it's still as I don't think people are still made to be as comfortable as they should be discussing this or saying, hey, I have a mental health disability, like you said. So that's one thing that I think is unfortunate in our society. So I do hope that conversations do grow more. I hope there are more projects, like For What It's Worth, that just shows just how it can affect your life if things go untreated, if you don't talk to a therapist, if you're not comfortable speaking with your family, things like that. So it's just really unfortunate. Now, one thing I did learn about you that you're from Columbia, South Carolina. I wanted to get some information on your upbringing and what made you decide to have an acting bug. Like, what brought you to be, what brought you to this career that you have now?
It definitely happened in Columbia, South Carolina, and I consider it home. But I'm a military brat,
Mm,
so I do consider South Carolina home, and I would consider myself a native there because I think that's the longest place I lived, besides Georgia. But I was born in the Philippines. I lived in
mm,
Japan. I lived in Louisiana for several years, and then I moved to South Carolina. And I completed high school and I went to college there. I attended South Carolina State University. And while I was in college, I used to work for this guy that I met in high school. We used to work at Pizza Hut together. And he went to theater school at Winthrop in South Carolina. And so he was a theater major. And I worked at a store in the mall where he sold like belt buckles and vibrating tongue rings. That was kind of in during that time. And what he would do with those, with the advertisements for his store, was he would do like skits on the radio and commercials, and people would come by the store and be like, "Oh, I just heard the skit from such and such and such and such," and so it kind of made him get a little bug.
Mhm.
And so he was like, "Huh, they're kind of loving these little skits. Let me do something else." And so he just started a TV show. He started a local television show. Columbia is considered metro, like metropolitan, because it's the capital of South Carolina. And so he started a soap opera type television show called Metro, and he added like all the little local celebrities in the area, and they each had their own little storylines. And I dated this guy named Collard Green, who was a rapper at the time, and we had this crazy relationship story. And there were a bunch of other people like Venom, who's a radio personality, that was in it, and it went #1 in the region. He was able to put it on CW, and I was like, I kind of like this. And so I just kept going. I would start going to Atlanta to do auditions, go to Florida to do auditions, and then I moved to Atlanta and just been going ever since. So
Wow, that's something else. Now, I know in addition to being an actress, I saw that you have produced projects, including a project that you had that was from the perspective of mothers whose children went through police brutality. So I want to ask you, what also brought you to not only just act, but also want to produce your own projects? And also, like, what type of subjects would you like to produce in the future, too?
I think that what brought me to wanting to produce is my very first love. The very first thing I ever wanted to be as a child was a writer. I would write books, I would write stories, and my dad would help me make little spiral notebooks to make it look like a book. And so I just have a vivid imagination. I don't know. I enjoy telling stories. And so being able to embark on the producing side allowed me to tell the stories that I feel like I've been compelled to tell. The mama situation came about because I just felt like God had jumped into me. Like I'm a news junkie, so I watch a lot of news. And so during that time frame where police brutality was really big, within the last couple of years, I saw the stories of Tamir Rice's mom and all the other moms that lost their sons, and them getting on the news and crying their hearts out, and just I felt the need to tell the story from their perspective. We got to see it from the police's perspective, what was happening to the kids, but what about those mamas? What about how it affected them? And even in that particular project, I touched on mental health for mama. And it was important to me because I wanted to tell stories. I want to tell stories that evoke emotion. I want to tell stories that make people think, that make people feel. And so with the mamas, there was one mother who just, everybody, it affected them physically. It was anger, there was anguish, there was a lot of different things that happened. But one particular mother cracked. She couldn't take it. She lost her mind. And so we got to see how that affected her in terms of the stories from the mom. So that's how I got into it. I want to continue to tell stories that make people laugh, make people cry. I recently produced another short film called Celia's Cabin. It's a slave movie. And when I was younger, that's one of the books I was, Roll the Thunder, Hear My Cry was my favorite book. Like just all the slave stories. And that's just something I always wanted to do, was tell the story from their perspective through my mind. So yeah, I want to do superhero stories, you name it. I'm open. I'm not necessarily in a box, but I would definitely, as long as the stories that I tell evoke emotion, I'm okay with it.
Wow. Now, I know that you also have some other projects that you've worked on, including some featured projects, including one with Aaron Eckhart. Can you tell us about some of your experiences? What have been some of your favorite moments so far in your acting journey? Like, are there any particular projects that you've worked on that kind of, have a warm place in your heart? Or any projects that you learned something totally different that you never thought that you would encounter in your acting journey?
Yeah, I mean, wow, I've had some great moments on a lot of different projects. When I got a chance to work with Dolly Parton, I was cast in her anthology series called Heartstrings. I played in the Jolene episode. Great experience. She was just a gem. Um, the cast, the crew, everybody was just it was heartwarming. So getting to meet Dolly Parton, getting to work alongside Dolly Parton, and being in the scene with her was pretty interesting. Even other stories, like I did a series called Murder Calls, and I played a girl who lost her mom, right? And that was compelling to me because I remember when I got done filming that particular project, I left Tennessee because I filmed it in Tennessee. And I remember I cried like for like an hour leaving there, but cried in a good way, right? Because I lost my mother at a young age. And I felt like I was supposed to do what I was supposed to do. And I remember I was in a hospital scene, and I made the nurses that were playing in the hospital cry, like for real, after being evoked with the emotion of losing my mother. And they cried so hard, they cried harder than me. They was like, oh my God. But it came from a truthful place. And even though I lost my mom, and I lost my mom at a young age, she actually died on my 10th birthday. I still felt like, dang, was that supposed to happen so that I can do this and tell this other girl's story honestly and truthfully? So that was a really good moment that I will never forget. Like, I felt compelled to tell that story. And even recently, I'm playing a role on Will Packer's new miniseries, Fight Night. Had some interesting moments on there. I love doing comedy. I love making people laugh. I love being a part of things that just evoke that type of emotion as well. So you name it. I've had some great experiences. So
Awesome. And how can we hear a little bit about your future project with Aaron Eckhart, if possible? If you can share anything.
yes, so working on that project was really it was really good. They filmed it in Kentucky. That was my first time visiting Kentucky. And that was one of the projects that Kentucky got, like, in a way that, how can I put it? They were pretty excited to get the project. So Kentucky's pretty growing. Aaron Eckhart was there. That particular project, how can I put it? I really enjoyed working on it. I met some really good people. The cast and the crew was amazing. The director was everything. He was such a joy to work with. That particular project was interesting because I remember when I auditioned for it, right? I had like 7 auditions that week. And that was the one I think I felt like I didn't do the best on, honestly, because I was just moving fast. I was working, everything was going on with the kids, and I had 7 auditions that week. And the particular role that I played was Congresswoman Priscilla Cross, right? She
Mhm.
actually is a woman who was advocating for police brutality, right? And I had not too long ago did the Mamas movie where I starred in it playing police brutality. And out of all 7 of those auditions, that's the one I ended up booking. Even though I felt like it wasn't my best audition, the casting director found me on set when he came on set and said, I just loved your audition. It was so perfect. It was so truthful. And I was like, maybe I was being kind of prepped for that audition because I just did the mama's thing. So that was how I was able to really be passionate about being Priscilla Cross and that police brutality that happened in that movie. So yeah. That was interesting to see that was the one that I booked, where I'm playing advocate for police brutality.
Wow, that's something else. Do you have any words of encouragement for people who, just like you said, you auditioned, you didn't even think it was your best, and you end up getting it? I think right now people maybe they just need some encouragement on following their dreams, and sometimes we'll think that something's not working out, and we may be putting too much pressure on ourselves, or we may be overthinking. There's so many factors involved why sometimes we'll think something isn't our best, but from the lens of someone else they think it's your greatest. So, like, do you have any words of encouragement just for people to just not necessarily just to not think that you're not good enough for something? I guess if that's the best way to put it. Because sometimes self doubt, imposter syndrome, stress will have us thinking that we're not giving our best when we really are.
And that's fair because I've been there. My advice would be to own in on tenacity. Pray for tenacity. Pray to God to give you that willpower to stick in there because timing is everything, right? I have had times throughout my journey where I just wanted to give up. But I always tell myself I only have 24 hours to sit in my crap. You know, if I feel like I want to give up one day, all right. But girl, you only got 24 hours. And if you make it to 48, you better stand up tall and start over again. So I would say pray for tenacity because you're going to need it. Pray for longevity. Pray for discernment. Because the thing is that you got to you got to go through the journey to get to the reward. The reward. If I would have had some of these things happen to me maybe 6, 7 years ago, I don't necessarily know if I was ready. I wasn't hanging around the right crowd. I thought that certain people were my friends, and I had to go through certain things to get rid of that crowd for God to bless me the way he wanted to bless me. I had to learn the industry. I had to learn the game. I had to learn to utilize my discernment so that I'm not walking into situations where I think that people are good for me and they're necessarily not, because the truth be told, like the old people would say, hanging around the wrong crowd will block your blessings. And I can testify to that, you know. There's a lot of things that you need to learn in order to sustain yourself mentally, physically, emotionally, financially, and most definitely spiritually. You got to find the job that can keep you afloat while you're chasing your dream. You got to have your emotions intact because people are going to test you at times. And you got to know that you got to speak with a clear mind and not allow the emotions to affect you, because you can get, nobody may want to work with you if you're the type of person that's easily to cuss somebody out, you know? So having to be able to own in on those emotions and make sure that they don't overpower you, your mental health. This game will try to make you think that you're not good enough sometimes, or that this is just not your time, and that, oh, maybe this isn't for you. You got to always remind yourself of who you are and whose you are in order to keep going. And then the job. What job can sustain you so that you're not really living the starving artist thing? Because that's not going to work. That's definitely not going to work. You don't want to be out here starving, living on somebody's couch, because then you will lose your confidence. You can't be confident if you don't have the money and the finances to sustain yourself while you're pursuing your dreams. And the spirituality. Pray, 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 and then pray some more. Pray that no weapon formed against you prospers. Pray that God keeps you in this game. Pray for tenacity. Pray that God allows you to go forward and not backwards. Pray that God allows you to have discernment. Pray to God that he advances you and gives you a long lasting career. Prayer, prayer, prayer. I pray every day about this. Every single day I pray about it. And so it's a combination of things, but if you do them all and you make the right choices, and you keep the right people around you, you'll be fine. You'll be just fine.
I love it. Like everything you said applies to no matter what journey you're trying to take in life. Like it's everything. Praying, having tenacity, not also getting out of this whole starving artist thing, like you mentioned. Also, the wrong crowd really can make or break you. It literally can destroy your life, especially if you have a dream. You
Mm-hmm.
can't be around negative people, you know. And also, when you do have a dream, sometimes people know your worth more than you do. Sometimes people feel that light in you. So sometimes if you don't have that confidence, you could be walking around with $1 million dream. You could be the next it person, but you have this imposter syndrome. You don't realize what you have. But that next person, people smell it. They know what you have, and they can use you. They can make you. They can break you. They can reduce you. So it's just so important what you said. Like just your circle really will make or break you. And sometimes there's so many people who, unfortunately, they're not living in their full potential because they have the wrong people in their lives and letting them get into their ear. So that's something amazing that you said too. So I wanted to ask you, of course, as I mentioned, self-love is a huge factor in our platform. Self-love, as you mentioned, is the fuel to have that confidence. Sometimes you have to have confidence just to walk away from something. Even if you say, hey, this is a friendship that has expired, or this is a circle that's not fulfilling me. You have to have self love to know that, hey, I'm valuable. I don't have to deal with this. Or having that self love to say, I really can accomplish this dream. I just have to keep working for it. So, how do you define self love? And in addition, I know you touched on it, but what role has self love also played in your life where you currently are, just fulfilling your dreams and living in your purpose?
Wow. Um, Self love. It means everything to me. It means everything to me. And I thank God that I have it. I don't know if it just came organically because I've been through some things. And so I had to learn to love on self. I lost my mother on my 10th birthday. I lost my father not long after that. I've been abused by family members, adopted, near death car accident, lost my sister. Like I have been through some things and I had to learn to love on myself. And somehow I did. And I think that is one of the most important things that you have to do, because I don't know if it's because I lost my parents that I had to learn to love on myself more. I don't know if I would necessarily be that particular person that loves on myself the way I do had I had my parents to love on me the way that most people do. I'm just not sure, but because I don't have it, it's like heightened, right? Because I had to learn to be the person that makes the right decisions, because who's going to tell me to make them? Who's going to tell me? I did have, let me make sure I do say this. I do have someone in my life who's my aunt who has allowed me to flourish through her. She stepped in to fill the void of my mother. So she's taught me a lot of things. And through those things, that's where I feel like the self-love prevailed. And I think it's important to do the things like make those hard decisions, right? If something's not for you, you have to let it go. If something isn't, if it's too stressful, I think it's important for people to guard their mind, because I watched somebody in my life lose their mind. So I love on myself to the point where my tolerance level is zero. And it's zero because I can't afford to let the job stress me out to the point where I'm losing. I can't afford to let a relationship stress me out to the point where I'm no longer myself anymore. And I can't afford to allow friendships or family ships bring me to a point where I'm just no longer myself. And so I feel like I work hard to do the best at loving on myself, even if that means letting go of things that I don't necessarily want to let go of. And I think that the project that I can relate to the most in terms of self-love is For What It's Worth. Um, just with the character herself, she had to learn to love herself beyond dealing with somebody that she should not have been dealing with, honey, because Quincy was, that was a married man. She should not have been doing that. That's first and foremost. And then she didn't have her emotions intact to the point where she was allowing herself to overeat for comfort. That was something that she, as a character, had to overcome. But I think you see at the end, she had to make the choice between how she allows that man to affect her and what she uses to fill that void. And so when she comes to terms with the fact that she's hurting herself by allowing the emotions that come with this man to inflict her, she somehow is able to overcome. But I think it takes it takes a lot. It takes her siblings, right, to tell her you're wrong. It takes her siblings to love on her enough to be like, look, we got you. You're going to get through this. And then it took for her to see how he was treating her. It took for her to see that she wanted more out of that. And it took for her to see that she was really unhealthy, making those unhealthy choices, trying to fill the void with a man that don't love her. That's somebody else's man. What are you doing? So, yeah.
And that character, I think a lot of women probably could see themselves in that character. I'm not saying everybody has spent time with the wrong person, but a lot of people have spent time with the wrong person. I'm not saying necessarily married men, of course, but I think some people have that chapter in their lives where they just spent time, whether it was a person or just a thing, something that was simply a distraction. And also because they didn't think as highly of themselves, and they thought that's the best that they could do. They thought that job was the best they could do. They thought that friend was the best they could do. They thought that dysfunction and that family, was the best they could do. And like you mentioned, just how she was trying to fill the void, in a healthy way. So that's something else too that definitely rings to, once you embrace self-love, you realize you don't have to, waste your time anymore doing those things. So this has been an amazing conversation, but I want to ask you lastly, tell everybody what's next. I know you do have the project with Aaron Eckhart coming next, but what else is on the horizon? Where can we see you? Just tell us what's going to be next on the horizon for Leslie.
Awesome. So, for what it's worth, it's actually going to premiere next month as well on the BET cable
Okay.
and on BET Her. So you guys will be able to check that out in the month of June. In the month of July, I have a movie coming out on Lifetime. It's called Call Me Now. It's about the psychic Cleo from back in the day. I know you probably remember.
Yes.
So it's a biopic about that. It's directed by Tim Reed. So I'm excited about that. And then I recently have booked a recurring role in Will Packer's miniseries Fight Night. So hopefully you'll be able to see me in that soon. And I'm producing and working on my own projects. So
Awesome. That's great. And yeah, I definitely remember Miss Cleo. What character will you be playing in that?
I will be playing a character that she ended up she had some hardship. So she ends up moving in with me.
Okay.
So I think that's all I'll probably be able to share right this second. But I want you to definitely tune in. Let me know what you think, and I hope you like it.
Awesome. I'll definitely be tuning into that. And I'm also excited about Fight Night too. So I have heard a few tidbits about that. So I'm definitely excited about that. But this
It's
has been a
good. It's gonna be so good. I'm so thankful to God for being a part of that project. It's gonna be so amazing.
and is Kevin Hart in that? Like who else is in that?
Kevin Hart, Taraji P. Henson, Don Cheadle, Terrence Howard, Chloe Bailey, myself. Who else is in there? Atrice Johnson is in it. Ryan Lawrence. Who else? It's a bunch of people. I can't name everybody off the top of my head, but it's a bunch of people. Melvin Gregg, Sinqua Walls, so many great talents. Yeah, you're gonna love it.
A huge thank you to Miss Leslie Black. Make sure you follow her on social media. She's on Instagram at Leslie Black Acts. Also, be sure to check out For What It's Worth on BET Plus and be on the lookout for the upcoming production Fight Night.
She's a queen about a business, working hard on a mission.